It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 4 films of December 9th, 2005. Now, you might be wondering, why is the light not on? You know, this is usually when I have it do this in the nighttime. This is actually being recorded on Monday afternoon because I was going to record this last night, but of course the Steeler game went on way too long because of the weather delay, and let's just say after that game, I really did not want to talk about anything in general. I just wanted to go to bed because of obviously what happened, but and also the fact that you know, not only was that game ending that way, all the footage I had recorded from the stuff I recorded last night for the Reviewing Network Live couldn't be used because I had no space left in my phone to put together the final episode. So yeah, that's why this is happening on Monday afternoon. There's still going to be another Time About the Movies later tonight, but I wanted to get this out of the way now, so I had something, at least had something you, because I hadn't had an episode the last couple of days, but anyway, with this particular episode, though, we have 4 movies in particular to talk about, some notable movies, including the first movie of the Chronicles of Narnia series. We also have Memoirs of a Geisha, Rob Marshall's follow-up to Chicago, the controversial Brokeback Mountain, and Mrs. Henderson Presents. So we got 4 films to look at today. Let's just go ahead and jump on into it. I'm already wasting your time with this intro, so let's go ahead and jump into the first movie we have, the biggest new release of the weekend. That is the aforementioned The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So this is, of course, based off the Chronicles of Narnia book series by C.S. Lewis, and something I didn't realize was that even though this was the first published entry in the series, it's actually the second chronological one in the series, so I never really knew that. But then again, I never really had an interest in the books anyway. I was just following these through the movies. But in this movie, you have 4 British children who evacuate during the Blitz during World War II to the countryside, and they find a wardrobe that leads to the fantasy world of Narnia, where they ally with the lion Aslan, voiced by Liam Neeson, and the force against the forces of the White Witch, is played by Tilda Swinton. And this was kind of Disney's answer to Lord of the Rings. You know, Lord of the Rings had just ended a couple of years ago, and everyone was looking for the next big fantasy film franchise, and Disney was hoping that this was going to be it, and needless to say, it worked out much better than they could have possibly imagined, because this took off big time. It was a massive hit at the box office. You know, it upstaged Peter Jackson's follow-up to the Lord of the Rings films that came out the week later, which, I don't know, I think it's still a lot better than most people let on, but this was a pretty big deal when it came out. I mean, nobody was really expecting this to become the big hit that it did, and it essentially opened the floodgates for other studios to say, well, shit, if Disney has their Lord of the Rings, we need to have our Lord of the Rings too, and it just led to countless attempts to try to create another Lord of the Rings that just didn't work out as well as they wanted to, like The Golden Compass, Aragon, The Seeker, The Darkest Rising. Like, we're going to get to a bunch of them in the years to come, but as far as this one goes, it's a pretty good movie. It's a really well-made film, visually stunning to look at, directed by the same guy who did Shrek, Andrew Adamson, making his live-action feature film debut, and it really does work very well. It's a very impressive-looking film. Visually, it looks gorgeous. Storytelling-wise, it does a very good job of telling the story, and getting you invested in the fight that's going on between the situations that they have in the film. I think the actors as a whole are giving the parts very well. The 4 kids are playing the parts very well. There's a lot of magical aspects to the movie in general. It's just a really, really good movie, man. It's just a really fun, engaging family adventure film that fits right in the fantasy realm, and yeah, it's a really good film in general. In fact, all the movies in the Chronicles of Narnia series, for the most part, are pretty good. The 3 that we've had that were in theaters, I don't think I've ever seen one that's really terrible. I think the worst one is Voyage of the Dawn Treader, but even then, there's still a lot there to like about that movie in general. But this one, I think, is still the strongest of the bunch. Tilda Swinton, I think, plays a good villain in this as the White Witch. Liam Neeson, that voice he has, that distinctive voice coming out of this lion, is just pitch perfect, man. It just works on so many levels. Not much more to say, man. This is a really, really good movie. I can really see why a lot of people took to it. It's definitely worth a watch. I highly recommend it. Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Rob Marshall's follow-up to Chicago, Memoirs of a Geisha. So in this movie, you have Zhang Ziyi from Hero in Rush Hour 2 as a young Japanese girl, Chio Sakamoto, who is sold by her impoverished family to a geisha house called Okoya. I'm probably going to butcher these pronunciations here, but bear with me. Kyo is eventually transformed into a geisha and renamed Sayori, and becomes one of the most celebrated geishas of her time. But with that success, Sayori also learns the secrets and sacrifices of the geisha lifestyle. This is a movie I probably should like because it has a lot of good talent involved in here. You got, like I said, Zhang Zi from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Hero, Rush Hour 2, a great director in Rob Marshall coming off of Chicago. It's got this incredible visual look to it. You think you can go no wrong with it, but unfortunately, the rest of the film really is not that great in general. It's a shame because there is a lot to admire about the movie. I think the cast overall holds it together very well. I think they do a good job playing these roles, despite the material given to them. The direction is nice. The music by John Williams is very good. And again, beautiful visuals all the way through. Where the film really falls apart, though, is with a problem with a lot of these movies, style over substance. The movie can look great, but the story is not. It plays a lot like a melodramatic soap opera. The main story really has nothing interesting or exciting to offer or to make it stand out on its own. It's a film that's a perfect example of, as I said, a style over substance storyline where the visuals stand out more than the actual story does. And there's definitely a lot of ways Members of a Geisha could have worked. You have a great cast, a good director, a really great visual flair, but you don't have the good story to work with. It really does hurt the film in the long run. You can't rely simply on visuals just to make us forget the lack of a good story and expect us to go along for the ride. I mean, the Avatar movies barely get by on that front, and even the last movie wasn't all that great in general, but you gotta give us a good story to work here, guys. But just, here we don't get it, and what we do get is a nice-looking, well-acted, well-directed misfire. And I think, honestly, that's the best way to describe the film in general. So, yeah. Not much more to say about Members of a Geisha, but let's get to probably the most well-known movie that came out this weekend, and that is, of course, Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger in Brokeback Mountain. So we kind of touched on this controversy with this back when Crash came out, but the film stars Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal as two American cowboys, Enos Del Mar and Jack Twist, who end up getting into a romantic relationship. It's essentially a gay cowboy movie. You know how South Park did that episode of the film festival, and they always talk about how, the movies that they show there are nothing but two gay cowboys eating pudding. It feels like it's that type of movie, but unlike those movies, this actually does feel like a legitimately well-made film in general. I mean, this is a really good movie, and remember when I said with Get Rich or Die Trying, I would kind of stretch the truth about the movies I saw back in high school and try to make reviews off of them? Yeah, this was another one of those ones that I didn't get to see. I didn't see in theaters, even though I told people I was going to go see it. I was going to talk about it on the show, but it was kind of hard to touch on a movie like this because of obvious reasons. You're in high school. You only have certain limitations of what you can say about what you could say in general here, and I was going to do an episode overall back then, but I never ended up making the episode. It's one of those ones where I had the script ready to go, but I just never got around to filming it. I just waited for the movie to come out and go, and then go from there, and then just never really did a review for it back then. So I didn't really get to see this one until pretty much when it came out on DVD. And I can definitely see why it has the lasting impact it has, because it is a very good movie with two very solid actors. You buy into their relationship that they have in the movie here. You also have two great performances by Anne Hathaway and Michelle Williams as their wives. Their relationship in this is so well done. The relationships with their love lives, not just the love lives from the cowboys in this, but also the love lives with their wives are just so well done. You can see why this movie became the masterpiece that everyone says it is. But of course, let's talk about the controversy here, because as I mentioned before with Crash won Best Picture over this movie, to the point where even Jack Nicholson on Oscar night was so shocked that this movie lost, because a lot of people really were expecting Brokeback Mountain to win Best Picture that night, and then you see Jack Nicholson open the envelope, and even he was looking at the envelope like, really? And he said, and the winner is Crash. And it's just and yeah, it received controversy because of subsequent censorship from Focus Features, criticisms from conservative media outlets. The sexuality of the main characters has been subject to discussion, but it was really a major turning point for gay cinema into the mainstream, because at this point it was mostly relegated to indie stuff. We had a couple movies here and there that tried to be more mainstream, but didn't match up to the success that they could have back then. But this was the first one that really broke the mold. This is the one that really opened the door for many other movies with a gay sub main plot all to really take shape. And sure enough, as time went on, these movies have become more and more appreciated, especially at the Academy Awards, especially the year when movies like Moonlight won Best Picture over La La Land. You know, certain films like that, and just Brokeback Mountain was the first movie to really open the door for that. And for Ang Lee, he needed this after what happened with Hulk, the last movie he directed. But yeah, Ang Lee was very desperate to get a hit after Hulk crashed and burned. Everyone thought his career was pretty much over and done with. But most notably, the biggest thing that this movie really did was, open the door to mainstream cinema being more centered around gay people. I'm looking at the list right here of there's a list on Wikipedia of LGBT Academy Award winners and nominations. I got to the point where it says Best Picture winners and nominees with LGBTQ themes. I just want you to see something here. Take a look at this. Look at how many movies there are before Brokeback Mountain with a relevancy of gay, transgender, bisexual, lesbian. It's about only 8 movies in general, but then look at the list after Brokeback Mountain, and Capote too. Both of them were kind of big, came out around the same time. Look at how bigger the list gets as you go back and back and back. Like that's impressive of what this movie, and as well as Capote, and even Trans at the same time, pretty much did in general here. And it's really, really impressive of what this movie was able to accomplish and open the door for so many movies going forward. And it just really opened your eyes. I think it really opened a lot of Hollywood's eyes to what the future of Hollywood was going to be like, what the future of the Academy Awards was going to be like in general here. Although I do think it's kind of interesting that since then only 2 movies with that theme have won Best Picture, and that was Moonlight, of course, and also Everything Everywhere All at Once. But yeah, this is a really good movie. It's a really well-made film. It's an engaging love story, but unusual for some people, between 2 great actors. Of course, Heath Ledger left our world too soon. This was probably his magnum opus as an actor as a whole before he eventually finished off his career with The Joker. Another great performance by him, which ended up winning him an Academy Award. But just an incredible movie all the way through. I can't recommend it enough. It's definitely worth it. See it, Brokeback Mountain. Definitely a reason why that movie has a lasting impact. One of the best movies of the year, no question about it. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie that we have here, and that is Judi Dench and Bob Hoskins in Mrs. Henderson Presents. Yeah, this is definitely one of those period pieces where you have people that literally go like, most unorthodox. Like, as soon as I cut that, there's one scene in particular that does literally feel like somebody would say most unorthodox. But in this movie, you have Judi Dench playing Laura Henderson, who's an eccentric British socialite who opens the Windmill Theatre in London in 1931. Bob Hoskins is also in here as well. Pretty good too, and pretty unrecognizable at first. Because, they actually give him hair in the back this time around. Like, they actually give him... Because I'm used to seeing him without the hair and all that. But you also have Kelly Riley, Christopher Guest, directed by Stephen Frears, who the following year would have probably his biggest success to that point with The Queen in recent years, not more of his recent movies in general. But this was another one of the early Weinstein Company releases. And it's a fun little one in general. Nothing too spectacular, nothing too amazing, nothing too groundbreaking, but... overall, a really good movie, benefited by the great performances by Dench and Hoskins. It's a really good. It is a really good movie. It can be very funny at times. It can be very serious. It actually is a musical too. It has some interesting musical numbers here and there. But yeah, it's a really good movie. It's a really fun film in general. One I was actually kind of surprised I really enjoyed. So I can't recommend it enough. Definitely check it out. Mrs. Henderson Presents. And so with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. When we meet later tonight, I'll talk about 3 more movies in the middle of December. The aforementioned Peter Jackson version of King Kong. We also have the Christmas comedy, The Family Stone. We also have, lastly, The Producers, the remake of The Producers based off the Broadway musical with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick, directed by Mel Brooks involved. Uma Thurman, Will Ferrell's also in here as well. We'll talk about all 3 of those movies, and that'll be later tonight on the show. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the place on the next page, check out the previous episode. Also, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification button, because we post here every day. And with all that said, I'm off. I'll see you guys later tonight, and until then, as always, Take care.